Short-term versus long-term rentals in Sonoma County. Which is better? In today's video, we'll be breaking down the pros and cons to each of these and whether or not you should steer away from Airbnb or consider a third alternative, the mid-term rental market. If we take a look at all the purchases that have happened across Sonoma County over the first half of this year, we can see that in places like Healdsburg, 64% of all purchases were for properties that were not owner-occupied, while 67% of purchases in Guerneville were for non-owner-occupied properties. In other popular places such as Sebastopol and Sonoma, the percentages were less, with 43% and 48% of all purchases being non-owner-occupied properties. But that is still nearly half of all homes. The question is, what are these homes being used for? Long-term rental investment properties, short-term rentals, or maybe something in between? The truth is that it's very difficult to determine their actual usage, but let's take a look at the pros and cons of the different options. Let's start off with short-term rentals. Over the past decade, there's been a huge boom in the vacation rental business. You only need to look at Airbnb as a business and see that for the 12 months ending March 2023, their revenue was up another 32% to 8.7 billion. So if Airbnb is a barometer of the health of the market, it tells you the market is still definitely going strong. If you are interested in learning more about the health of the vacation rental business in Sonoma County specifically, check out my recent video in the description below. Although there are a number of pros and cons to vacation rentals, as with any real estate purchase, there are just bad purchases and good purchases. You need to think about who the audience is for the rental and make sure that you buy in an area that is right for the audience you're trying to reach. Put simply, some properties will just never make a good vacation rental. Let's take a look at the pros of vacation rentals first. The first one is the flexibility. I would guess that at least half of the homes that are being purchased as non-owner occupied are either being purchased as dedicated second homes or as properties that can be operated as a vacation rental, but which the owners also want to enjoy for themselves. In a place like Sonoma County, which is just so popular as a weekend getaway place from people who live in the Bay Area, the ability for a homeowner to short-term rent their place, it's an attractive option because it means that they can also get to enjoy it themselves. I work with numerous clients that really want a second home that they can enjoy, but they need some sort of income on it to make it a viable financial investment. For many people, their goal is for it just to be cost neutral. They don't need to make a huge profit. It's more important to them to have a place that they can enjoy and get the benefit of potential capital upside over the long run. The other big benefit of vacation rentals is the higher rental income. Short-term rentals through platforms like Airbnb, VRBO, will always command higher nightly rates compared to long-term leases. The big question is, how often do they get rented out? In other words, if you can get $1,000 a night, it's important to understand, how many nights you can actually get it rented over the course of a year. If we take a market such as Healdsburg, for example, you can expect an occupancy of 63% with an average daily rate of $850 for a 3-bed home. This quickly adds up to getting an average of $12,000 a month for income for a 3-bed home in Healdsburg. There are plenty of people doing it. For example, there are currently 239 active vacation rentals in the Healdsburg area. If we look at a market such as Guerneville, for example, you can expect similar occupancy levels, but with an average monthly amount of nearer $6,500 for a 3-bed place. Clearly the big difference, of course, is that the purchase price in Guerneville is likely to be, probably a third of the equivalent place in Healdsburg. The next big benefit of short-term rentals is the market adaptability. You can quickly adjust pricing to take advantage of either favourable or less favourable market conditions. So in that way, you can actually maximise your profits. I mean, this was no more evident than during the pandemic when nightly rates went through the roof as people maxed out their income. Of course, the converse is true. Many vacation rental owners right now are having to reduce their rates to maintain their bookings. While this isn't ideal, at least you do have the flexibility which you just don't have if you are locked into a 12-month lease and conditions change. However, as well as the macro environment, it's equally important to be on top of the local nuances of any particular market, such as knowing when there are local events that are likely to attract tourists. For example, if there is a local festival in a town, then you need to make sure that you bump up the rates for that weekend. The other big benefit is tax benefits. I mean, I'm not a tax expert, but you should definitely get separate tax advice. But I've got numerous clients who use a technique of tax aggregation to offset some of their costs for running their vacation rental business. The important thing is that you're actually actively involved in running the business, so you can't outsource the management of it to get these tax benefits. In essence, you elect to aggregate your businesses for the purposes of a qualified business income, resulting in a lower tax bill. So what are the downsides of vacation rentals? Well, the first thing is they've got higher operational demands. Managing short-term rentals can be labour intensive, involving frequent guest turnovers, cleaning, maintenance, ongoing guest communication. I mean, a lot of people refer to Airbnb as passive income, but that's just plain wrong. A successful vacation rental needs to be operated like a business. It needs to be managed by somebody who really cares about creating a great guest experience. I mean, this is more important than ever, especially in a tougher economic environment. It's the vacation rental hosts that go out of their way to create a unique experience that are the ones that will truly deliver the returns. If you do choose to outsource the management of it, then there are plenty of options, but you'll pay a hefty management fee in the order of something like 20% of the monthly income. The other downside of vacation rentals are the regulations. Certainly in Sonoma County, the biggest challenge for someone wanting to own a vacation rental is finding a property that is eligible. For example, you may want to own a place in Sonoma City to enjoy for yourself and then rent it out when you're not using it. But unfortunately, most cities in the county, they don't allow vacation rentals. As a result, you need to identify properties that are on the outskirts that will be eligible for a permit. I mean, there are a ton of opportunities for finding places, but you need to navigate some of the complexities around zoning and exclusion zones and septic systems. I actually have a website where I list all the vacation rental eligible properties in the county that are for sale. So if you want to get access to that, send me an email or give me a call, and I'll put my contact details down below. The good thing about the restriction on the number of properties is that if you do purchase one, there is a natural limit on the number of competing vacation rentals in a given area. So it does help the overall profitability of the ones that do exist. I actually made a separate video about the best places in the county to find a successful vacation rental. So if you are interested, check it out. And what about long-term rentals? As with short-term rentals, you need to identify properties that will make a good long-term rental and which will give you the returns you're looking for, whether it's a multi-family property or a single family home or family home with an ADU. With the current interest rates, I mean, it's increasingly hard to actually make the numbers work in Sonoma County, but as a general rule, if you can find a property where the monthly rental income is at least 0.5% of the purchase price, you stand a chance of the numbers working. In other words, for $1 million property, you want to be getting $5,000 per month in rent. One of the reasons that properties with ADUs have become so popular with investors is because if you've got a single family home and then can generate an extra $2,000, $3,000 per month from an ADU, it makes it a lot easier for the numbers to work. The other big benefit is lower vacancy rates. Unlike a short-term rental where occupancy rates are 60 to 75%, a long-term rental should have minimal downtime. If you're lucky, you'll get a tenant who stays beyond 12 months, and so you can end up literally with having no downtime over a 2 to 3 year period. Of course, it only takes not getting rent for a couple of months between tenants to make a big dent in the finances for the year, as you lose, a sixth of your income over a couple of months. And the other big benefit that people like is there is less hands-on property management. Property management for long-term rentals often require less day-to-day involvement, allowing investors to be more passive. In my experience, you'll often get a lot of calls in the first 45 days whenever a new tenant arrives, but then hopefully after the initial teething period, you won't hear from the tenant for months on end until the washing machine breaks. Because the management is less hands-on, a property management company will typically charge a lot less. It will often be in the range of 6 to 10% of the overall income. And the other benefit is you have lower operational costs. Compared to a well-run vacation rental, a long-term rental will generally net less profit. However, for some people, the reliability and reduced risk of a long-term rental is the way to go. A big part of the economics of long-term rentals are choosing the right property in the first place. Because of the predictability of income, it's pretty easy to work out if a property makes sense as a long-term rental property. So what are the downsides of long-term rentals? Well, the income's always going to be lower. They don't have the high headline figures of vacation rentals, so compared to a high-performing vacation rental, you'll always make less money with a long-term rental, but then the risks are much higher with a vacation rental. The question is whether you want a safer investment without the variability, or go for a high risk, high reward approach of a vacation rental. And the other thing is obviously rent control. One of the challenges for landlords are the limitations you have when it comes to increasing rental rates. If you have a tenant in a property and they stay there for say 5 years, the chances are they'll be paying well below the market rate. Of course, there's a balance between a stable tenant and getting the highest market rent, but this is always a juggling act for long-term landlords. But also as a long-term rental landlord, you will have tenant issues. Most of the time things work out. However, there are times when a tenant refuses to move. I've had to deal with this myself and had to use the full force of the law to evict a tenant when I wanted to sell a property. It's always possible to get rid of a tenant. It's just a process you have to go through. Unlike a vacation rental where Airbnb takes care of all the payment, so it's impossible to have someone not pay for a stay with Airbnb, with long-term tenants, you don't have the same control over getting the money. There will almost certainly be times when a tenant doesn't pay on time for whatever reason, and so this is just something else that you need to navigate as a landlord. So both short-term and long-term rentals, they've got their pros and cons, but there is a third option which I call the mid-term rental market. So what is a mid-term rental? It's a rental for 30 days or more, typically up to 90 days. In some ways it's similar to a short-term rental because the property does need to be furnished and fully equipped. And in fact, platforms like Airbnb have a whole section for 30+ day rentals. The good thing with mid-term rentals is that you can do them on any property. There are no special permits or rules or licenses required. For some people, it's the perfect solution because you can operate them anywhere. So in places vacation rentals are banned, and while the monthly income, it will always be less than a vacation rental income, it will always be a little bit more than a standard 12-month lease. But it also gives you the opportunity to enjoy the property when it's not being rented. Over the past few years, I've seen more and more homes being rented on this basis, particularly in places like Santa Rosa, which are close to some of the big hospitals, because there's always a steady flow of traveling nurses and traveling doctors who need accommodation for say 30 to 90 days for an interim position. There's even a website called Furnished Finders which specifically caters to this market. Even in places like Healdsburg City or Sonoma City, there's a strong market for furnished rentals for 30, 60, 90 days. The typical guest is someone who wants to spend a month or two in the city as an extended break from their primary residence. For example, a client of mine lives in Colorado, but comes to Healdsburg every year for a month in October to enjoy the weather and harvest. Similarly, there's always a steady flow of people who are looking to purchase in Healdsburg but haven't found the right place yet. So they want to rent something for sort of 3 months while they find something, or for people who are doing a remodel and so they need some alternative housing for the course of the remodel while their work's being done. The great thing about this type of rental is that it enables you to purchase a home in a city which would not allow for vacation rentals, but at the same time it gives you some income and allows you to use the property yourself when it's not being rented. So which is right for you? I mean, there's no right and wrong. It all depends on your specific goals for the property and whether you want a pure investment property that you never use, or if you want to enjoy the property yourself. It also depends on your tolerance for risk and whether you want to chase the maximum returns of a vacation rental, for example. Most people only ever consider short-term rental or long-term rentals, but for some people, the mid-term rental market almost gives you the best of both without some of the headaches associated with either of them. So I get calls all the time from people looking to either buy or sell rental properties in and around the Healdsburg, Windsor and Sonoma areas. So do reach out if you're looking at buying in or around Sonoma County, or would just like to know more. I'll put my number in the description below. If you enjoyed this video, I'm sure you'll love the next one on screen right now. Thanks for watching. Until the next video, go well.